Welcome to Relevant Revitalization, where you will find out the good, bad, and ugly of church revitalization. You will hear from pastors who have been through the revitalization experience, experts in the field, and much more, all with the goal of equipping, encouraging, and engaging you, your leadership, and your congregation to see God-breathed life in your church. Now, let's get into some relevant revitalization.
Welcome back to another episode of Relevant Revitalization. I'm your host, Matt Coyne, and today we have the privilege of having Dave Miles back with us, founder of VitalChurch Ministry. We had such a great conversation the last time we had him on, and I still had some more questions for him, so he was gracious enough to take some more of his time and talk to us. But let's start with Dave. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Not doing too bad. It's a nice day out here in the North Shore of Long Island.
Good. So I know you were on just a few weeks ago, but if we've gained any new listeners or somebody who didn't get to go back and listen to that, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, your ministry experience, passions, family, all that fun stuff?
Sure. I grew up in the great state of Michigan. Broadcasting from Lower East Side, Lower East Side. Near the Detroit area. Came to Christ. I grew up in a Christian family. Gave my life to Christ is probably a better way to put it. Committed my life to Christ when I was in high school, and learned when I was in college that I was a change guy. It's just who I'm. That's who I am, wired to be. I change things. Discerned God's call in the ministry. Met my wife in college. We got married. We've been married for 43 years. Have 3 daughters and 7 grandchildren. And really made a career out of working as an intentional interim pastor in churches in some kind of transition or crisis. Was able to do my doctoral work at Fuller Seminary in that regard, and so I'm literally using my education to do that. And so I've pastored churches from 70 people up to 1,100 people as the lead intentional interim pastor, helping them work through their issues of transition or crisis. And so this has been a career. It's a passion. I love the local church. The staff that we work with in VitalChurch loves the local church. And so, some people just seem to be angry at the church all the time. And we're not, that's not us. We actually like nations and pastors and leaders. And we love the church in America. And so that's kind of what we do.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for that. And I know you've already been on, but if somebody wasn't here, where can they find VitalChurch Ministry and what you all have to offer?
You can go to www.vitalchurchministry.org. We've got essentially 2 divisions or groups, if you want to call them. We're not a big organization, but we got an intentional interim division, and we got a diagnostic division, and then we've got follow-up coaching as well. But the diagnostic division asks, discern what's the real issues. The interim pastor division executes solutions to those issues. We got a 4-stage process. What are the real issues? God's solutions to those issues. God's, leaders, God's plans for the local church. And so you can get all of that, including our values and mission and so forth, on that website.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I know I keep saying go back to the other episode. Go back to the other episode and hear the different tiers as well that VitalChurch Ministry offers, and I'm sure you'll talk about some of that here as well. Yeah. But yeah, let's just jump right in. So last time we had you on, we talked about finding the taproot issue, as VitalChurch likes to use, and I like that saying, that taproot issue, and talked about what that all means and how to diagnose and where to start and all that stuff. And another topic I wanted to talk to you about, Dave, though, was staying patient in the revitalization journey. I know for me, I am one of the most impatient people I know, especially in ministry. We came to our church, in 2021 in June, and by November, I was already almost in tears to my wife, going, why is nothing happening? Why aren't we growing? Why aren't we getting healthy? Why isn't the conflict being resolved? And she goes, Matt, stop. We've been here for a few months. Be patient. So, I know somebody who loves the church, who wants to see the glory brought to God and to see it grow in a healthy way, it can get cumbersome. So I'm just going to ask you right off the bat, how do you stay patient in the revitalization journey?
That is a question that I've had to actually come to grips with in my own, I don't know, professional career, if I could even use that. I don't want to be crass about, a person's call into ministry. But the last podcast, we talked about diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
How you discern what the real issues are in a church. When you talk about staying patient in a revitalization journey, you're talking about how you not how you discern what the issues are, but how you implement solutions to those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of do what Titus did, who uh, set in order what remained unfinished. Titus 1, chapter 1, verse 5. Okay, Paul calls them to set in order those things that remain unfinished, and that discipleship is a lifelong endeavor for all of us.
Mm.
And so while the diagnostic piece actually happens pretty quickly,
Yeah.
the intentional interim piece, or that revitalization piece, we do it pretty quick. We do in 18 to 24 months, 12 to 24 months, we go through a really quick, like addressing the real issues. And we've discovered, though, there's no scientific study behind this, but what we've discerned is that it's 5 to 7 years to change the culture of a church.
Mm.
5 to 7 years. And so it's just this commitment to believe that discipleship is a lifelong endeavor for all of us.
Yeah.
And so our attempt then is to shepherd a church through the transition, not drive, but lead.
Mm.
And so we got to stay patient by reminding ourselves that God himself is patient and long suffering, with us as we journey in this, this learning to be more and more like Jesus. Okay. So how dare I ever drive people to change? How dare I? Because God doesn't do that for me. We want to, our power is under, not over, to oppress people, but to serve. And so staying patient is really the reminder that discipleship for both us and this congregation is a lifelong journey, and it just takes a long, long time. And that's got to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you said that 5 to 7 years, because we want it to happen in a snap of a finger. Of course. I mean, that's, being part of the revitalization journey myself, I want it to be a snap of a finger. But, and I'm not going to say, don't get me wrong, God can do it. I have seen things even within our own church, the way that God, it feels like a snap of a finger, that I go, oh, okay. I have a saying that I always say, we got to get out of God's way and allow him to work through us. We so often limit what he can do, his power and what he is trying to do. And here we are trying to put it in our own hands. And here we're just actually stopping what God's trying to do. So I think it's so vital to make sure that we're learning how to remain patient in this journey. But
Yeah, people much more likely to actually take you seriously if they know you love them. Even if you're, for me, it's an intentional interim pastor. I'm not going to be there long term. Okay,
Yeah.
They're glad I'm there. They're going to be more glad when we're gone. But if they know that we love them in spite of this, that our whole journey is to serve them, then it actually makes it more palatable. And again, that's part of that patient. I actually happen to like the people I serve. I love every one of these churches that I've pastored has been hard to leave, because I actually fall in love with the congregation.
Yeah.
I just love the people. And so if people feel that way, it makes it easier to be more patient, because, it's you just you care for people. Now, I'm not saying that, we make a lot of mistakes, but we really do care for the congregations we serve. And that's part of that patient process.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, within the being patient with learning that and allowing the Holy Spirit to give you that patience, there's going to be moments of frustration. There's I'm not going to lie to any pastor listening right now. You're going to get frustrated. It's going to be those valleys where you're going to be at home, wanting to beat your head against the wall saying, what do I need to do? But so often, if you caught what I said there, what do I need to do? Again, those moments of frustration, we take it into our own hands. So in those moments of frustration, how do you look past them and you look to God and remind yourself that this is for his glory and for his kingdom?
Now, for me, I would say there's a couple of things that I have, I guess maybe practices that I'm not even sure practice is the right thing. Number one, I remind myself of the long-term goal, which is our mission. Our Vital Church mission is to see many more churches, large and small, operating in unity and effectiveness through a movement of the gospel that creates change, permanent change, and transformation in the communities in which they live. And so I remind myself of that. I also remind myself of church history. There was a great book by a man named Alan Kreider called The Patient Ferment of the Early Church. And the whole thing is really about discipleship and how the church over the long haul, we're talking generations, hundreds of years, one step in front of another, lived out the gospel message in such a way that it literally overtook the Roman, empire, became a Christian empire in the first part of the 4th century. Why? Because one step in front of another. That's just the way it works, okay?
Yeah.
So if you remind yourself of that, it actually, it's very encouraging.
Yes. Yeah. I know for me, I know I keep talking about me, but I can't talk about you or anybody else.
We're an expert in ourselves. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
What's that?
So you're only really experts in ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, in those moments of frustration, when I do want to take it into my own hands, and I do, I always, one of the definitions I like to say of being patient in the Lord is giving it to him and not taking it back. You are saying it is yours. It's not mine. I'm not Lord of my life. You're Lord of my life. But how often do we go, now you're taking a little bit too much time. I'm just going to pull that right back. So within that process, Dave, I guess an additional question I have is, when a pastor does that, what, again, how do we not do that? How do we stop ourselves from doing that? But if we've already done it, it's too late. Someone's listening. They're going, oh, no, I've already done that. What's some encouragement you have for them?
Well, if you've done that and, people are angry because you've done it, it's a pretty simple word. It's those of us who are a little bit more perhaps reformed or from a Calvinistic background would use this word, the R word, repent.
Yeah.
Change your mind, own it, admit that you've pushed a little harder than you should, take your foot off the gas pedal, and remember that God, takes a long time to accomplish his purposes for his glory. If we need to own our stuff, do that. And that's, if you've taken it back and you've offended people, go make it right. It is more important than getting stuff done. Because I can tell you, if people feel like they're being forced to do something, they're going to push back pretty hard. But if they're invited to do something and the motivation is grace and beauty and the loveliness of God and his plans, they're more likely to say, yeah, because you love me, I'm willing to tackle this. And so that's how I think I would encourage people to respond to it.
Great. Now, on the other side of that coin, we have the frustration, we have that despair, we have those seasons that things don't seem to be going right. But then we have those seasons of life of success. We have, there's conflict that's being biblically, taken care of. We have growth, both maybe numerically and I hope more importantly spiritually. We have, it's a good place. But how do we remain humble? How, as a pastor, do we not look at it and go, look what I have done. Look at my accomplishments. And do we remember, no. This is Christ Church. He obtained it. Acts 20, verse 28. He obtained it by his blood, and all glory goes to him.
It's actually, I don't really know any other way to in our success, any other way than to remind ourselves of this is something God is choosing to do for his glory and our good. And reminding ourselves that. And if we don't remind ourselves of that, and we become full of ourselves, and we drive the congregation as opposed to lead or serve them, uh, you know, it becomes problematic. One of the, I talked earlier about in the previous podcast, I talked about Vital Church has discovered what we call the unholy trinity. Idolatry is the supreme head of the unholy trinity. Conflict is the second person of the Holy Trinity. And the third person of the unholy trinity is power. And so when pastors become successful, it's not unusual for them to power up on people to get more done. And all that does is cause problems. And because if you push and power up on somebody, they're going to push and power up back on you. And now you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So part of staying humble is remembering that this is not our church. It's Christ's church. He does what he does for his glory. There are pastors in churches that have done a great job for decades. The church doesn't grow. It doesn't become it just doesn't. They're in small communities. They're never going to be big. They're never going to, and so, I mean, what do you do with that? Well, you just remind yourself, this is the body of Christ. And he does what he does for his glory. And if we can remember this and recognize that a vast majority of churches will never have the kind of growth or success that perhaps American culture would think was normative. It's just a good reminder and keeps us from doing, what we shouldn't do when God actually provides that fruit. For example, Vital Church has grown beyond anything I would have ever imagined. Never in my wildest imagination would I have dreamed that God would do what he's doing with this organization. For a long time, we were just a small team as a part of an international mission agency that gave us that had the creativity to allow us to, to experiment and do this kind of thing. We made a lot of mistakes, okay? But God is doing something. And so I remind myself frequently, this is just something God's doing, and I get to be part of it.
Yeah.
And so when we find ourselves more successful perhaps than we thought we would, if we remind ourselves that this is God's choice, he gets, and he's doing it, then it becomes a point of encouragement, and we can stay, broken and humble and before the living God and before the people of God, which is, I think, really important as we, move into the future.
Yeah. It's, as you were talking, I'm going to get real theological here. I took our family a few months back to go see the new Disney movie, Wish. And you go, I know you're like, what is he going to do with this? There's a king. I'm not going to explain this too much, but he sings a song, and it's called "This Is a Thanks I Get." And it's all about everything he has done for his kingdom and all how he's protected them and has grown it and this. And as I'm listening to it, I actually lean over to my wife and look at her, and she's like, because we were just talking about how often pastors, I said, that is the song of a prideful pastor. This is the thanks I get. And so, do you like how I did that there? Got real theological, where I think as I heard this song saying, I've done this, I've done that, I've protected you, and this is the thanks I get, because what was happening is they were all turning on him because they were realizing how prideful he was, how selfish he was, how self-motivated he was to do things that only was for him, and every decision he made was for him, and now he's getting all upset. And I think as pastors, when we get into that season of success, when we're not careful, we start to have this mindset of, this is the thanks I get. I've done all this stuff, and now you're pushing back against me. And I know I've been guilty of it. I know I've been guilty of saying, well, look what I've done to bring this church here. And now, no. It wasn't me. It was God working through me. As you said, we are just a servant, and we are honored and blessed and privileged to be a servant of the Lord and to be part of his part of the bride. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Anything else on that idea of just remaining humble?
I wish I could say something profound.
Not from a Disney movie?
Yeah, well, okay, so you said it, I'll admit. Yeah, I mean, it's actually, you go back to the book of Deuteronomy, what's the word you read over and over and over again? remember,
Mm.
right? Remember,
Yeah.
remember, remember. And when the people of God forget, that's when they have problems.
Mm.
So I think we got to remember that it's God's spirit and God's word driving God's success. We got to remember that it's Christ in us and through us, not our gifts. We got to remember that God chooses to do what he chooses to do for his glory and
Mm.
our good. And if we forget that, then I mean, it's, that's when it becomes problematic. And that's when it's time to call Vital Church, because you're, it's job security for me, because churches are, they're not going to respond to that kind of arrogance. And yeah, it's a problem. So just being willing to go back and remember your own brokenness. And, the goal is to create goodness in the culture and community. I love Scott McKnight's book, A Church Called Tove,
Mm.
uh, this is the goal. Let's let God do that, and let him get the glory, not us, and
Yeah.
enjoy the ride. Because a lot of times, and I know that you've experienced this, Matt, a lot of times ministry is brutal.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is. Yeah.
It is just really hard. And so if you got some measure of success, enjoy it, because, but it's not because you're so good. It's because God's so great and has been generous and kind in doing what he's doing.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, I appreciate you adding that on. That's good. Well, I know this show's a little shorter, but it gives you the excuse now to head over to vitalchurchministry.org and check out what they have going on over there. And I can say firsthand, I know I said it last time I had David on, was it, I know firsthand with working alongside, serving alongside, that it is effective the way they do things. And I know what some of you are saying, because it's the first thing we ask. How much? Can I do this? Go over and see. They have different tiers. And the first tier is actually, Dave, I'd like you to explain what the first tier is, because I don't want to misrepresent that.
Sure. There's essentially three groups or divisions. We're not an organization that's huge or anything, but we've got a diagnostic division, we've got an intentional interim division, and then we got a follow-up coaching group. I don't know that I even call it a division. That's what we do. We revitalize churches in transition or crisis. That diagnostic piece is oftentimes it's what makes or helps our ministry be effective, because we discern what the real issues are. Now, for larger churches or a church that's in some significant transition, we've got what they call tier 3 diagnostic. It's expensive, okay? It's a full blown. We assess everything and then give an oral and written report. A lot of money, and some churches need that. A lot of the smaller churches, they just can't afford that. So we got tier 1, which is like I think it's called a church vital signs survey. It's very reasonable. And then a tier 2, and all of those are explained on the website, along with, if you find yourself in need of an interim pastor, we have that explained there as well.
Awesome.
So go check it out. Who we are, what we believe, how we operate. It's all there on the website. And under that diagnostic link up there, you'll see tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 with a full explanation of how you can serve you and your church.
Awesome. I'm glad you explained it, not me. Yeah, be sure to head over there, vitalchurchministry.org. But before we head out, as I always do, Promotions Guy has made it possible for us to give away a few copies of David's favorite resources. And we gave these away last time he was on, and I want to give them away again. The Great Dechurching by Jim Davis and Michael Graham, Prodigal God by Tim Keller, and The Emotionally Healthy Leader by Pete Scazzaro. These are three that as I said last time, they just fit in not only leadership, but our personal spiritual journey, as well as a social insight from this great dechurching. And again, the giveaway is only made possible by Promotions Guy. All you have to do, go to Instagram, go to Facebook. I'm going to share a post with these three resources, just like the post. The only reason is I want to know who's interested. If you're not, I'm not going to give it to somebody who isn't interested. Just like the post. I'm going to pick a random person, and I will mail those out to you, the copies of each book. And also, just a reminder of what Ryan and Promotions Guide does. I can't guarantee it, but I can almost almost guarantee it's going to be the softest shirt you wear, which, by the way, I don't say this often. You get one of his shirts too with the books, which is pretty cool. So they print anything for your church and ministry, from golf balls to t-shirts. And most importantly, Ryan loves the Lord and he loves the local church, and he just loves people and he loves seeing all the glory go to God. So Ryan, thank you for that. David, again, thank you for joining 2 episodes. That's a lot to deal with me, so I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, but just like I did last time you were on, any parting words of encouragement for our listeners?
I would say hang in there. I mean, again, I get a lot of my encouragement from church history. The Patient Ferment of the Early Church by Alan Kreider, great book, describes how over many, many generations, because they made disciples, the church grew not only within itself spiritually, but influenced the entire Roman Empire. And so I would think about doing those things and read widely in terms of church history and how God has worked in the past, and be encouraged, because Jesus made that promise: gates of hell will not prevail over my church, and I buy into it. There's no, what did Keller put it? There's no expiration date on that promise, I think is what he once said.
Yep.
And so I believe that, and I think we should take encouragement from that.
Well, great. Well, again, thank you. And I just want to always say to our listeners, the goal through this podcast is to equip, encourage, engage pastors in the revitalization journey. So that means it's just more than a podcast. Reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram. I'd love to chat with you about revitalization in your church, or if you just need to talk to someone. As we've talked about, it seems like almost every episode it comes up. It's tough, and I don't want you to have to do it alone. And if you feel like you're alone right now, please reach out. I'm here for it. I'd love to pray with you and just journey alongside you in that process. So that's all we have today for Relevant Revitalization. Until next time, I'm Matt Coyne. We'll see you then.